President Biden is facing strong opposition from Republican lawmakers over his nearly $2 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. Some experts, including Columbia University professor Jeffrey Sachs, believe the high price tag is necessary in order to get the U.S. economy back on track. But if the Biden administration's recovery plan is passed by the Senate, how will the U.S. government pay for it in the long term? For more on this, let's go ahead and bring in Jeffrey Sachs. He's a professor and director at Columbia University Center for Sustainable Development, and he's also the president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. It's great to have you with us. Jeffrey, you said that President Biden's you've said that President Biden's COVID-19 relief package is basically a short-term solution. What are some of the long-term needs that our country is facing?
Right now, we have to stop the pandemic, and this rescue package provides funding for immunizations, for first responders, for helping to open schools. So this is a rescue package, as the president has said. He's going to follow this with a recovery program, and the recovery program is to rebuild and modernize our infrastructure, to change our energy system so that we're not wrecking the environment as we produce and use our economic goods and services. We're going to have to go through a major global restructuring everywhere, for example, to electric vehicles in the future. So the recovery program is the long term. It's the long-term investments in good jobs, in new skills, in new infrastructure that has not really been repaired for decades. That's what's coming up after this first piece of legislation.
So, Jeffrey, I heard you mention infrastructure and energy. That's obviously a major concern when we're looking at our post-COVID economy. And we can really see that on display right now with Texas dealing with an energy crisis following that winter storm and frigid temperatures. Given your expertise on climate issues, what must the United States do to better prepare for extreme weather events? And how does that fit into rebuilding our economy?
We've had climate disaster after climate disaster in every part of the country for year after year after year. What Texas is going through is suffering. We had the suffering in the Pacific Coast with the massive forest fires. Here in the Northeast where I live, we had Hurricane Sandy, which created so much damage that it took years and years and years even to just get back to where things were. We've had flooding and great disasters of extreme hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico hitting the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast. In other words, we're being besieged by climate change. We're not alone in the world. Every part of the world is experiencing the same kind of disruption now. So all over the world, governments are saying we need a safer system that doesn't change the climate. And the main way to do that is to move to renewable energy, to wind and solar power and hydroelectric power in places that can do that, to move to a safer energy system than one that is based on coal, oil, and natural gas. Again, we're not alone in that. Every major economy in the world, China, Japan, Korea, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, you name it, moving to a zero carbon energy system based on renewable energy. And that's what President Biden campaigned on. And that will be part of our recovery program as well. It means a lot of new jobs building a new energy system, but it's a change that has to be made for our safety. The kind of mass disruptions that we're having, these big amplitudes of freezing and warming, of extreme storms, of massive forest fires, of massive flooding, of rising sea levels. This is the result of long-term human-induced climate change. Not every single shock and every single storm, but the tendency towards more and more damage. We've got to get ahead of this, and we've been in denial for a long time. But President Biden understands that this is an imperative for us, and this is what's coming up as a major agenda item for the post-COVID era.
Well, in terms of not just this short-term, but the long-term solution, it's all going to cost money. And you discussed 3 different ways which the U.S. could use to try and pay for trillions of dollars in relief and investments, including borrowing, taxing, and the Federal Reserve simply printing more money. What are some of the consequences of each of those actions?
Well, we do a bit of each, but in our country, people will not really believe this to be true, but we have not changed our tax take as a share of our national income actually for 75 years. It's unbelievable. The federal government collects about 16 to 17% of our national income. And with a little fluctuation year to year, it's been the same for decades, even as healthcare costs have gone up, even as the population has aged, even as the infrastructure has become more complex. Every other high-income democracy, I'm talking about countries like Canada or Sweden or Germany or United Kingdom or Japan or Korea, has had a rising amount of taxes as a share of national income because the role of government has become more and more complex, because populations have aged, because Social Security costs more, healthcare costs more, and so forth. Not here in the United States, because we were told about 40 years ago by Ronald Reagan, tax cuts pay for themselves. Not true. Unfortunately, it would be a wonderful world if they did. So we've been borrowing. We've been borrowing rather than taxing. And as you asked me, we should borrow a little bit more in the emergency, but we can't go on just borrowing. We've been printing money, which has been okay because we've been in a period where the Federal Reserve, our central bank, could issue more currency without inflation. But what I say in this article is that this reaches a limit. Nobody knows exactly where the limit is, but I can tell you we're coming closer and closer to that limit. There are even some signs of early inflation, even in the midst of this continuing COVID crisis. I'm not saying get hysterical about that. I'm just saying that there are limits. So if we want more government in the future to take care of our healthcare or infrastructure or our schools or other areas that I believe are extremely important, we're going to have to pay a bit more for that. But I also suggest some ways that we can tap the incomes of the super rich to help to do that.
That's what I was going to ask, particularly when you're talking about raising taxes. When people feel like they are struggling as it is, given the current economy and the pandemic, you can imagine how many of my viewers are probably reacting to that proposal. So fundamentally, when we're talking about this rescue and relief, are you actually recommending that the Biden administration raise taxes in order to restore the economy?
I'm saying not for the rescue package. This is right now. This is what we need. But I am saying that as we come for the next stage, which is long-term investments, we once built the highway system. It took almost 30 years to do that. It was a lot of spending year after year. Now we're going to be engaged in a similar kind of activity of making our infrastructure resilient, modernize it, a digital economy, and a green economy. That's going to be decades. That's going to require more federal spending, and we're going to have to pay for that through higher taxes, I believe, at least in part. And what I would suggest is that we look at some of the places where the money is in our economy. The super rich have gained so much during this pandemic, it's unimaginable. The wealth at the top, at the very top, Mr. Bezos and Amazon, he has net worth of almost $200 billion, one person. Elon Musk, I'm thankful for Tesla, but net worth of roughly the same. And we have mega billionaire after mega billionaire and a tax system highly favorable for them. We gave big tax cuts to corporations in 2017 under the Trump administration that we should not have done. It was not affordable then. It's definitely not affordable now. It has led to huge corporate post-tax earnings that show up in this stock market boom. Does the average American person really have to then not have basic infrastructure or not be able to have the government afford vaccines or the basic care because of the wealth that's gone to a tiny fraction of Americans? I don't think so. I think we need a fair tax system that collects more revenues so that we can have the kind of long-term economy that we really need.
All right. Jeff Sachs, thank you.
Good to be with you. Thank you.